Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
Throughout the vast tapestry of American history, certain narratives have been intentionally obscured, erased, or forgotten altogether. Among these lost stories are those of the Black Native American tribes, communities that once thrived through their unique blending of African and indigenous heritage. These stories, rich in culture, resilience, and identity, challenge the traditional narratives that have been passed down for generations. Yet, the deliberate erasure of these tribes has left behind a haunting silence, masking the profound contributions and struggles of these people. Unraveling this suppressed history reveals a landscape of oppression, cultural genocide, and social manipulation that has buried the truths of these communities deep within the annals of time. The intertwining of African and Native American histories began long before the formation of the United States. During the era of European colonization, enslaved Africans often escaped the brutal confines of slavery and found refuge among Native American tribes. In many regions, indigenous nations welcomed these escapees, forging familial and cultural bonds that led to the emergence of distinct Black Native American communities. These alliances were more than mere survival strategies. They were a testament to human solidarity in the face of colonial violence. However, as colonial expansion intensified, so too did the efforts to dismantle these alliances. Laws were enacted to divide Black and indigenous peoples, and racial categorizations were manipulated to disenfranchise and disempower these blended communities. One of the most insidious tools of this erasure was the implementation of racial classification systems, particularly the one-drop rule and blood quantum laws. These legal constructs not only stripped Black Native Americans of their tribal affiliations, but also denied them the rights and recognition afforded to other Native populations. The Bureau of Indian Affairs and colonial governments systematically reclassified individuals, erasing their indigenous identity if they possessed African ancestry. This bureaucratic violence effectively severed their legal and cultural ties to their tribes, rendering entire communities invisible within the historical record. The tragic legacy of the 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole nations, further illustrates this deliberate erasure. During the 19th century, these tribes were coerced into adopting the institution of chattel slavery, creating a complex social hierarchy within their nations. Following the Civil War, treaties with the U.S. government required these tribes to emancipate their enslaved people and grant them full tribal citizenship. However, over time, many of these tribes systematically disenfranchised their Black members, stripping them of land rights, political representation, and cultural recognition. The descendants of these freedmen continue to fight for acknowledgement and inclusion within their ancestral nations today. The Trail of Tears stands as a grim chapter in American history, but less acknowledged is the suffering endured by Black Native Americans during this forced relocation. As the U.S. government violently uprooted Native American tribes from their ancestral lands, Black members of these communities faced compounded hardships. Enslaved and free Black Native Americans were subjected to brutal treatment, often separated from their families, and denied any claim to the lands they had cultivated for generations. Their stories of resilience amidst unimaginable suffering remain largely untold, overshadowed by dominant narratives that omit their presence altogether. In addition to physical displacement, cultural erasure was a calculated strategy employed to dismantle Black Native American identities. Missionary schools and later Indian boarding schools became tools of assimilation, targeting indigenous and mixed heritage children. These institutions sought to eradicate indigenous languages, spiritual practices, and social customs. Black Native American children were doubly marginalized within these environments, often facing racism from both white administrators and other Native students. The trauma inflicted by these institutions has had lasting effects, fracturing cultural continuity and severing generational knowledge. Land dispossession remains another devastating consequence of this erasure. Black Native Americans, like their indigenous relatives, were systematically stripped of their lands through fraudulent treaties, coercion, and outright theft. However, due to their marginalized status, they were often excluded from legal protections and compensation mechanisms afforded to other Native groups. This exclusion not only deprived them of economic stability, but also severed their spiritual and cultural connections to the land, a loss that cannot be measured in monetary terms. Moreover, The historical portrayal of Native Americans and African Americans as separate and distinct groups has contributed to the invisibility of Black Native American identities. Popular media, educational curricula, and historical scholarship have largely ignored or simplified these complex identities. This narrative omission perpetuates stereotypes and erases the rich, multifaceted experiences of Black Native communities. The lack of representation further alienates their descendants from reclaiming their heritage and understanding their rightful place within American history. Contemporary struggles for recognition underscore the enduring impact of this erasure. Black Native Americans continue to fight for tribal citizenship, land rights, and cultural acknowledgement. Legal battles waged by freedmen descendants against the Cherokee Nation highlight the ongoing struggle for justice and inclusion. Despite legal victories in some cases, resistance persists, rooted in deep-seated prejudices and historical injustices. This struggle is not merely a legal battle, but a fight for identity, dignity, and historical truth. The erasure of Black Native American tribes also has implications for broader discussions of race and identity in America. The rigid racial categories imposed by colonial and modern institutions fail to capture the fluid and dynamic identities that have always existed on this land. Recognizing and honoring Black Native American histories challenges these constructs, fostering a more inclusive understanding of American identity. It forces a reckoning with uncomfortable truths about the foundations of racial hierarchy and the deliberate efforts to divide marginalized communities. Reclaiming this erased history requires a collective commitment to truth-telling and historical justice. It involves amplifying the voices of Black Native American descendants, supporting their legal and cultural struggles, and revising educational narratives to reflect the complexity of America's past. Oral histories, archival research, and cultural revitalization efforts are vital tools in this endeavor. By confronting the disturbing truths of this erasure, society can begin to heal the wounds inflicted by centuries of oppression and denial. In peeling back the layers of history, we uncover not only the pain and injustice suffered by Black Native American tribes, but also their resilience, creativity, and enduring spirit. Their stories are not relics of the past, but living legacies that continue to shape the present. Acknowledging and honoring these histories is not just an act of remembrance. It is a step toward justice, reconciliation, and a more truthful telling of America's story.